What's up, YouTube? Today we're going to talk about second wave and third wave feminism. The reason why this is so important is because what we have today is a radicalized form of feminism. And this is built upon really, I would say, about 70 years of subversive teaching against men. Okay? Now, some people think this was a concerted effort, and you could tie it into conspiracy theories potentially. We know that what happened in the 1940s Germany, they learned a lot about how to sort of social engineer society, and of course Germany itself was a huge example of how to sort of brainwash a society. Now, on the flip side of Germany, of course, you have people saying, well, there really was a threat to Germany, etc. But I'm not going to go too deep into that. That's just what people say. I'm not going to talk about my opinion on that. But the reason why I bring up Germany is because there's something called Operation Paperclip, and you can look that up. It's basically, the gist of it is that the United States employed certain German scientists and German, potentially political figures. They basically shipped them over from Germany after the war, or at the very end of the war, and they employed them as United States scientists. And the reason they did that is because these guys had advanced knowledge on how to social engineer society. Now, it's rumored that these guys are the same ones who invented NASA and sort of manufactured the whole moonwalk thing. Now, I don't know if that's substantiated or not. That's probably just another conspiracy theory. But again, there's evidence for all this stuff. You can look all this stuff up, and it all connects, and you can go down the rabbit hole. The reason why I say that is because 1946, I think, is when the war ended, or 1945. I don't remember. It might even have been 48. I really don't. When did World War II end? It's a good fucking question. 1945. Okay, so the World War II ended in 1945. Now, second wave feminism came about in the 1960s. That's 15 years. It could be tied in, it might not, but there is rumors. If you read up on the conspiracy theory of Operation Paperclip, basically these social engineering scientists learned how to subvert the public with social propaganda. Now, why did everybody in Germany hate the Jews? Because they put out pamphlets of propaganda. What can I say that word? Propaganda. To brainwash the German people into hating Jews, and this has been a hot topic of discussion for decades and decades. How did Hitler and the Nazi regime get everybody on board, get everybody in Germany on board with their agenda to kill Jews and kick all the Jews out of their country? How did they do that? Well, they did it through propaganda. They did it through what's called social engineering. So again, you can tie that into, and you can say, well, how did second wave feminism become so popular? How did that happen, right? Well, it happened through social engineering. It happened the same way that the Nazis, it happened the same way that the Nazi regime got everybody to buy into the Jews being evil, by putting out pamphlets, by spreading propaganda, by having speeches and word of mouth, and everybody coming into agreement that, yeah, the Jews are bad. We all agree with this, right? It's the same thing with feminism. Let me repeat that. It's the same thing with feminism. Now, it's not the same ideals. It's not the same tenets. It's not the same concepts and beliefs and philosophies and systematic way of believing. It's not that, but it's the same means, it's the same method to do that. Through propaganda, through teaching, through spreading philosophy. How did Marxism become so popular? How did communism become so popular? Because it's a social revolution. It's spread socially, right? Now, I don't think there's anybody well, there are now, but I don't think most people objectively on paper are going to disagree with first wave feminism, which was to give women power socially, power politically, power in the workforce, the right to vote, right? All that was accomplished in 1920. Now, some people argue that in the 1960s it still wasn't in effect and people wanted it in effect, and that might be true. Maybe women had more enfranchisement in the 1960s. But some other things that happened was this idea of social freedom, this idea of I have the right to choose, right? I don't think that women ever didn't have a right to choose per se. No one is forcing anyone to get married, okay? However, there was social stigma. So what the 1960s and second wave feminism did was it removed the social stigma through the protests, through the demonstrations, through the preaching at the Capitol, through, the books that the feminists put out, through the meetings that the feminists had. This was a social revolution. Social revolutions are very powerful, right? When people get together and they preach things and they learn things, it's strong. That kind of stuff is indoctrinating and it's strong. But regardless, a lot happened in the 1960s, and the second wave feminist movement was coupled and paralleled right alongside the civil rights movement, which gave it more power, right? And then these two movements sort of piggybacked on each other and they supported each other, right? So this is why a lot of times you will have these liberal Democrats are going to be feminists, right? And this is why quote unquote lefties, right, are usually feminists, because these two sort of quote unquote freedom groups, right, civil rights groups, which there's nothing wrong, there's nothing objectively wrong with civil rights. They piggybacked on each other, right? So they support each other, and they still do to this day. However, there's a lot that is hidden in that. There's a lot of negatives there that they don't admit because they are tribal, because they are divisive, because they unfortunately are a monolith that is not what's the word I'm looking for? Self-transparent. You have to believe everything they believe, or else you're not going to be accepted. So if you're going to be a part of them, you have to believe everything they believe. Now, this is evident in the way they behave. So why is this so important to men? Why was second wave feminism such an important thing? Again, it brought up this concept of personal freedom for a woman, meaning I have total autonomy over myself and my choices and my decisions, and everything that I do is my choice and nobody can say anything. So it removed accountability. It removed social accountability under the guise of empowerment, right? Oh, you're empowered if you're a slut. Oh, you're empowered if you sleep around, because my body, my choice, right? And this is still something that women are saying to this day. They're parroting it. They repeat it over and over like it's an echo chamber of ignorance, because yes, it's your body, your choice, but that doesn't mean there's no consequences. That doesn't mean that, no matter your choices, people are going to have to respect you. And this is where this idea has become transmuted into something that's really just silliness. Like, yes, it's your body, your choice, but people don't have to respect you for your decisions and the things that you do, right? So this is what women want, and this is what a lot of times they don't understand, is that we have the right to not respect you. other people. Yes, you have the right to do what you want with your body, and it's your body, your choice, but we don't have to respect you. So if we don't respect you, and if we don't respect the choices that you make, we're called names. So that lets you know there's something wrong with that whole concept in and of itself. So if we don't accept the fact that you're promiscuous, we don't accept the fact that you have abortions, we don't accept the fact that, maybe you're unhealthy and overweight, right? If we don't accept those things, then we're bigots. If we have a problem with those things, then we're bigots. So women are forcing us through threats of attack, through name calling, through, doxing, okay? Through all these avenues of shame. So they're shaming us if we don't accept them. And this is the result of something. So it's like, if something is respectable, you don't have to fight it. If something is respectable, you don't have to intimidate other people to respect it. They'll just naturally respect it. And there's really not a lot that's respectable about promiscuity, you see. Well, in some people's eyes, right? So if people disrespect promiscuity, I mean, if there are some things that are just, again, totally respectable, like having a family, like having kids. There's nothing you can say against that. There's nothing that you can oh, you're just a tool of the patriarchy. You're just a dishwasher. You're subjugating yourself to a man by having his children. Like, you just sound ridiculous for saying that. Like, you have no point there. There's no that's just silliness, right? So, but when you flip the coin on its head and you say, well, wait a minute, you're going out and you're being promiscuous. I don't respect that. Like, you have there's some valid leeway to not respect that, because again, you could have kids out of wedlock. You could have STDs. You could have abortions. You could have broken hearts. You could get hurt. Anything, right? So there's definite points there. It's very difficult to tear down a family unit. It's very difficult to talk bad about having a family. That's very difficult to do. Yet women have tried doing it. Women have done it. These radical feminists have done that. Oh, you're just his dishwasher. You're just his slave. You're just his his baby maker, and all these things, right? But they just look stupid, because people want to have families. It's human to have families. It's normal to have families. But this was a big talking point in the 1960s, was that women were saying that men were our overlords and our oppressors and things like that. And the result of that, between 1960 to 1980, was a lot of divorce. And that caused a lot of problems in families, and that hurt a lot of children, which subsequently grew up dysfunctional, and then subsequently got on drugs, or had bad lives, or were depressed, or went to prison, or got into crime, etc., etc. This is all evident as a result of this propaganda, as a result of this social engineering brainwashing. The 1960s is a turning point in America. Is that to say that every family from the 1960s in the last 80 years has 60 years has been bad? Absolutely not. I mean, people are going to do what they do. People are going to find love. People are going to get married now. 50% 50% divorce rate. You're basically you're flipping a coin with your life. Okay? So that's why a lot of men are walking away. That's why a lot of people aren't getting married anymore. It's a big reason. It's a big part of it. But again, this is what happened in the 1960s. Now, in the 1990s, we've got third wave feminism. And third wave feminism basically was just a doubling down on second wave feminism, right? Now, these are the Gen Xers, right, who were born in the 60s and 70s, and they came of age, right? Third wave feminism is a doubling down of all the old all the the old stuff that they started talking about in the 60s, right? So it's basically just to redefine everything. Okay, third wave feminism was to sort of well, I'm reading it right here in Britannica.com. Influenced by the postmodernist movement in the academy. You see right there in the academy. So that tells you right there, that explains where the source is. That explains who is brainwashing these young women. It's the colleges, right? It's the colleges. Third wave feminists sought to question, reclaim, and redefine the ideas, words, and media that have transmitted ideas about womanhood, gender, beauty, sexuality, femininity, and masculinity, among other things. So they're trying to redefine everything, right? They're trying to, put their own bent on it. So what is postmodern feminism? Postmodern feminism is a mix of post-structuralism, postmodernism, and French feminism. The goal of postmodern feminism is to destabilize the patriarchal norms entrenched in society that have led to gender inequality. Well, there you go. That's radicalization. That is tearing down men. So the 1960s sort of started that movement, and it accomplished the removing of social accountability for your own behavior, your own promiscuity, or your own sexuality, right? Basically enabling women to be sluts with no consequences. And then, of course, Planned Parenthood came about in 1973, which was like, hey, wait a minute, we've got all these women out here having sex, and they're having all these babies. We need to do something about that. Planned Parenthood was started by, I think it was Margaret Atwood. She was the eugenicist. Yeah, I think she was Margaret Atwood. She was a eugenicist. No, maybe it's not Margaret Atwood. Who was the? Yeah, I don't think it's her. There's some. Why do I think there's a Margaret Singer? What the fuck? Anyway, there was this woman. Sorry, guys, I'm unprepared today, but there was a woman who was a eugenicist, and she started Planned Parenthood. So Planned Parenthood is linked to eugenics, basically. Margaret Sanger, that's her name. Margaret Sanger. She was a eugenicist, right? Along with two other women, she started it. And actually, if you study it, she had put these abortion clinics in black neighborhoods. If that's where they first started out. So that right there tells you something's wrong. That right there tells you that. And again, what did Planned Parenthood do? Planned Parenthood removed accountability, further removed accountability, right? Now, on the one hand, in the 1960s, they accomplished, the removal of, and again, this is social engineering. This is all planned, right? 1960s enabled the removal of social accountability behind promiscuity. Now, in 1973, Planned Parenthood came in and removed the physical consequences of promiscuity. Okay, so now in 1973, they can go in and just have an abortion, and it's legal, and it's very cheap. Not 100% sure how much. I think it's like $500 to $1,000, and if you have insurance, it'll pay for it or whatever. And there you go. Your whole responsibility is out the window. You don't have to have any responsibility. So this is, women are like, hey, now I can go have sex. Now it's like, if you think about it, that is a perfect storm. If you think about it. And then in the 1990s, the attack on the patriarchy. So whatever semblance or whatever was left of male leadership in the home, or even normal family relations and a normal marriage relationship was gone out the window, because now women are equal to men. Women can do everything a man can do. What do I need a man for? I don't need a man. I got my vibrator. I got my girlfriends. I don't need a man. I got Tinder. I don't need a man. I don't need a husband. I don't need that. Unless you want love, but that's something else, because then of course, we talk about love, we got to get into female nature, hypergamy, and all these other things, right? But again, why is this so important? Because this is social engineering. This is how we got to where we're at today. This is how the society that we live in today was formed. This is how it happened. This is our history. These are important steps that seriously affected the way our social order is set up. That seriously affected the way our social norms and customs work. It seriously affected the way men and women interact with each other. Seriously affected the way young women view the world, the way they grow socially, the way they treat social dynamics. All of this is why we have the red pill. This is all part of the red pill. We have to learn this. Red pill men have to learn how damaging feminism, second and third wave feminism were. Again, objectively, I've talked about this a million times before, but objectively, first wave feminism, I agree with it on paper. Women should be free to choose whom they marry, to have the right to vote, to be able to be in the workplace. All that is fine. I'm fine with women getting equal pay for equal work. No problem with that. Of course, I have a problem with affirmative action, because I think it's fundamentally, sexist and sort of racist, because it's like, a woman and a woman and a person of color or whatever is going to have to, have a job, and they might get jobs over people who are more qualified just because of their race and their gender, which I don't think is fair. Now, how that works out, in the real world, I admit that I haven't studied too much into that, but it sounds like affirmative action is not very fair to people who might be qualified. Now, hey, if a woman is more qualified than a man, more power to her. Give her the job. If a person of color is more qualified than a Caucasian man or a Caucasian woman, then fine, give them the job. It's all about qualifications, right? Which is why I think something like that sounds fundamentally unfair. Again, I don't know how that actually plays out in real life. Maybe there is very qualified people. Maybe the person that they're picking is more qualified than the other people. Now, I don't want to get too much into that, but like I said, it sounds unfair. And I don't want to get too much into it because I don't know too much about it, so I don't want to sit here and talk about something I don't know. But from my perspective, it sounds unfair. So I have no problem with first wave feminism. I have no problem with women voting, sort of. I have some problems there because of the results, because what has happened. They voted for abortion. Some of the things that they vote for, I probably wouldn't necessarily agree with. But objectively, I'm fine with it. Objectively, I think it's fine because women are humans. I don't think women are any less than men per se, but again, you have to look at people's behavior. You have to look at how people act. You have to watch how they really behave in society and otherwise. Now, with that said, maybe one can make an argument that women maybe are not acting the same as men, or maybe they're not firing on all the same cylinders men are. I look at it a little different. I look at it more like women have different talents than men. Women have certain things to their credit that maybe men can't bring to the table, that maybe men need women for. So I look at it more like a sort of synergy. I look at women as being necessary just as men are necessary. So I don't look at it one as better than the other, or one is stronger or more qualified than the other. I look at it as these two entities have different talents. These two entities bring something different to the table, which can both be beneficial. That's how I look at it, which is, I think, really what nature or God or whomever created us, or however we got here. I believe that's how it's really supposed to be intended. The problem is we have this divisive, sort of subversive, damaging, propaganda concepts of feminism, which tell young women all these lies about men at a young age when they're impressionable. And that's damaging, man. That really is damaging to society. Now, I wish that young women had more confidence, more self-esteem. I wish they weren't open to, and it's sad that that it happens in the academy. It's sad that it happens in colleges, because this is when young minds are perfectly open. So really, they're getting them when they're young. That's really a dangerous thing. That is really, because when you're that young, you soak things in, and you tend to believe, you're still kind of a child, and you tend to believe that what this is saying is true. And it's like your brain doesn't fully develop until age 26, so you don't really have the ability to compare and contrast. And also, you're only 18, 19. You don't have life experience. You don't have enough education and knowledge and experience reading and learning, and really to have the time to think about what you're hearing. You're just you're just being inundated by this information, and the person who's speaking it to you is probably 35, 40 years old, maybe older. So they have a way with words. They have a way to sort of teach you something that you don't know is subversive, and you don't know that what they're teaching you is damaging for you down the line, until by the time you hit 35, 40, you're like, damn, it's too late. I shouldn't have listened to all of them. I shouldn't have listened to all those feminists. I shouldn't have done all the things that I did, because feminism brainwashed me. And this is unfortunately kind of like gang life, kind of like how what happens with young men in gangs. It sounds good at first, like, yeah, we're a brotherhood, yeah, we're a sisterhood, yeah, we protect each other, yeah, we support each other, yeah, we love each other, woo woo woo. But then you do messed up stuff, and you don't realize that what you're doing is harmful to you until it's too late. And a lot of times, for women, for feminism, too late is 35, 40 years old. You got 100, 200, men body count, that men that you've slept with, and your eggs are all gone, and you don't have the ability to pair bond anymore. You can't love anyone because you're so messed up. Your emotions are so messed up. You're jaded. You're toxic. You probably hate men because the type of men that you chased and the reasons that you chased them were not wholesome or moral or quality reasons, and you got burned. And so by the time you hit 35, 40, you've just been used, because feminism told you it was okay to sleep around, and you listened, and now you're single, and you're overweight. You probably hit the wall, and you don't have a lot to offer a man as far as love goes. And women just think that there's just going to be some pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. Women are kind of clueless, and they really think that some perfect guy is going to come along, and really the guy that they actually get is a guy who is really probably not very good for them, or I wouldn't even say not very good for them, but I would say the guy that they get is not, the guy that they get when they're 30, 35, 40 is not the guy that they would have got when they were 20, 25. Now, there's a lot of reasons for that. One is, their looks have gone down. Two, they probably have a kid, so they're single moms. Three, they've got a lot of emotional baggage. Four, they've got four, they've got radical ideas. They've got all this radical feminist ideas, and they probably have a messed up character by that point. By the time they hit 35, 40, they're probably aggressive. They have an aggressive character. They're mean. They low key, subtly hate men, or they're trying to manipulate and run the relationship. Whereas if they would have found a guy when they were 20, everything would have been different. If they would have found love when they were 20. Now, shoot, it's like, it is 2020. It's like, but okay, what is sex? You go have you go have some fun, you mess around for a little while. But it usually doesn't work out like that, does it? It's years. They mess around for years, and it's hard finding the right guy, and then they don't know how to find the right guy. They don't know how to treat a guy, because third wave feminism doesn't say, here's how you be a good wife. Third wave feminism doesn't, second and third wave feminism doesn't say, here's how you do it, here's how you treat a man right. Anyway, so we all know what happens when they hit the wall and they go down and they become toxic, and men can tell. We can sense that this girl's toxic. Yeah, I might want to have sex with her, but aside from that, I don't want to date this girl. She's messed up because she's damaged by all this subversive propaganda. And this is what red pill men need to understand. This is what happened. This is why the women are like the way they are. It's feminism, man. It's frickin' feminism. Now, yes, female nature is hypergamous, and society is gynocentric, and women are solipsistic, they're selfish, and a lot of times they're narcissistic, and many of them are toxic. But they've learned how to do that by a society that has coddled them, and a society that has been duped by feminism. Like, oh, you can't question women, you can't say anything bad about women's behavior, or else you're anti-feminist, which means you're anti-misogynistic, which means you're a bad guy. And this is what they've accomplished through this social engineering, right? So anyways, guys, I just wanted to talk about that. I think that there's a lot there to unpack, and it's a lot that we've been going through in our society. This is what I fully really think is one of the biggest problems when it comes to the way women are and the red pill, things like that, is this feminism. Now, of course, we have female nature, which is a whole nother thing to unpack and a whole nother problem. But at least if we had feminism out of the way, then we could potentially deal with female nature. But those are basically the 1-2 punch knockouts for relationships, and unfortunately men take the brunt of that because we want companions, and it would be nice to have a companion, a quality companion. But anyway, I appreciate you guys listening. It's been Jay Lee, Northwest Podcast. Peace.